Maybe one of the more strange additions to FGO comes in a rather unassuming form, that of our dear Captain Nemo. His inclusion into FGO isn't necessarily unprecedented, as we have a number of characters from literature who have been written as having been real at some point. Nemo, in particular, is a figure shrouded in mystery, where with Frankenstein's monster we know of his creation, and with Mephistopheles we could surmise his origins and intent, Nemo is by his very nature a specter of a person. So, dive in with me as we cover the Captain with no name and look into the history behind Nemo. Let's start with the name itself. Nemo. Nemo is not Captain Nemo's name. Rather, it's a pseudonym with a meaning of nobody or no one. This naming concept should be relatively familiar to most of you, as the name that Odysseus gave to the Cyclops Polyphemus to hide his own identity in order to trick him. This was an intentional naming choice by author Jules Verne, as even on occasions when characters refer to the captain as Nemo, he will respond by saying, "I have no name." We should also address the issue of Nemo's appearance. Now, in FGO he is described as being both Captain Nemo, or rather Prince Dakar, and also Triton. This is due to Nemo's original master, Xion, tampering with his spirit origin in order to make a servant to better fit her needs. I'm not factoring Noah into this because that's a whole other can of worms, which for mobile FGO are irrelevant until proven otherwise. Back on track, this makes Nemo both Greek and Indian in heritage. The real reason for his appearance in FGO is very similar to Van Gogh's, where Triton's appearance was the one taken while Captain Nemo's memories and personality were mixed in. The name Prince Dakar mentioned earlier may have stuck out to you, especially given that I said Nemo has no name. We'll get into that a bit later, but what you need to know is that the original Nemo was the son of a Raja of Bundelkund, a descendant of the Sultan Fateh al-Khan Tipu. Nemo received a Western education and traveled around Europe in his youth, learning about the differences in culture as well as taking an interest in foreign technology and sciences. Additionally, Nemo is fluent in English, German, Latin, and French and remains keenly interested in the cultures of Europe. All of this is to say that Nemo is very likely a polymath, a person with an extensive knowledge in many different fields, and verifiably a polyglot. It wouldn't be unlikely for Nemo to have also known Spanish or Portuguese as well, but these are not explicitly mentioned in the novels in which he appears. Around 1857 and 1858, Nemo would lose his family in the Indian Uprising. Notable among these losses would be his wife and child, who he keeps a portrait of aboard the Nautilus. The Indian Uprising was an attempted vie at freedom by the people of India to be rid of the British who occupied them, but ultimately ended in failure. This revolt is the very same in which Lakshmi Bai fought and lost her life, making both Nemo and her comrades in arms, though it was never stated if they ever actually met one another. Unlike Lakshmi Bai though, Nemo lived through the revolution and took a number of his most loyal followers with him to begin studying the sciences. This resulted in the eventual creation of the Nautilus. This was a massive submarine described as a masterpiece of craftsmanship and science. The Nautilus was a sodium-mercury-powered submarine running on the salt of the sea and coal mined from the sea floor. It moved swiftly and elegantly, able to be mistaken by those above the water as some kind of massive sea creature. The ship itself is equipped with machinery for converting seawater into drinkable water, outfits for a crew to obtain food from the ocean, and luxurious amenities to rival the summer home of royalty. The only major issue in the design comes from its inability to refresh air, which it must do once every 5 days by surfacing, akin to a sea mammal. Famously, as well, the Nautilus is equipped with a massive ram at its front, able to puncture the hull of a ship below the waterline while sustaining little damage to itself. Nemo managed to construct such a technological marvel in secret by ordering the parts for it under a pseudonym and then having the parts sent from one location to another before eventually having them shipped to a deserted island where he and his followers followed through with its creation. After this, Nemo and his crew set sail, denouncing the world of the terrestrial, to live in the world without borders, the sea. Like this, Nemo spends his time. On occasion, he will assist those in a conflict that he deems worthy of his support, generally by sinking opposing ships. He and his crew also salvage shipwrecks for artifacts, as well as luxuries to decorate the Nautilus with. As time goes on, eventually the Nautilus is noticed by various nations of the world who believed it to be a dangerous sea creature. As a result, America does what America does best and decide to hunt the damn thing down and kill it. After a 5-month search, the narrator of the novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, a Frenchman by the name of Pierre Aronnax, a Canadian whaler named Ned Land, and Aronnax's servant, Conseil, survive an attack from the Nautilus and are captured by the crew. It is here that they meet Captain Nemo, who explains to the men his situation as mentioned above. He then tells them that he lives this way to avoid civilization and to conduct marine research unbothered. He also informs the men that due to how secretive the Nautilus is, they are not permitted to leave. As the novel progresses, Nemo remains a rather mysterious figure, and though he does mourn the passing of his crewmen, for the most part he remains rather cool-headed. That is, until he encounters a warship belonging to the British. Upon seeing it, he flies into a revenge-filled frenzy, and has the Nautilus rammed straight through it, presumably presumably killing all the members on board. This action comes to the horror of Aronnax and his companions, and after these events, Nemo becomes more reclusive and seems to slowly drift into madness. Partial signs of this are seen in his weeping before the portrait of his deceased wife and child. This is akin to the final nail in the coffin throughout the narrative that Nemo is a man driven by revenge against those who have done harm to him and his kin, but perhaps that is something that actually goes against his own nature. After these events, it seems that the hull of the Nautilus takes on less of the adventurous, exploratory atmosphere that it had before, and becomes more akin to a ghost ship. Navigation seems to all but cease, and the crew of the craft seem less inclined to upkeep their posts. All the while, Aronnax becomes more and more deeply afraid of the captain, on occasion hearing him make remarks lamenting his fate. Given the failing circumstances of the ship, Ned discovers that they are close to land and convinces his trapped companions to attempt to escape. This attempt proves to be nearly fatal as the Nautilus has come upon the Moskenstromen, or the Maelstrom, a real-world whirlpool that was, and still is, famous for its strength and lethality. For you literature nerds out there like myself, this is the very same whirlpool mentioned by Edgar Allan Poe in his short story, The Maelstrom. The Nautilus becomes trapped in its massive pull, but Aronnax and his companions manage to escape, watching as the Nautilus is sucked into the depths below, and this is where Nemo exits from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Despite this, Nemo, the crew, and the Nautilus all survive this encounter, at least for a time. In the novel The Mysterious Island, set during the American Civil War, 5 soldiers become stranded on, you guessed it, a mysterious island. Throughout the novel, these soldiers encounter several impossible odds, all of which are solved via deus ex machina. For example, the way in which they get to the island is from a balloon which breaks and falls to the island. This should have killed them, but they survived. They also just happen upon guns and other tools. Resources appear in the cave in which they are living, and at one point when pirates arrive, the pirate ship mysteriously just explodes. It is near the end of the novel that the men come upon and are invited into the Nautilus. There they find the one who's been assisting them the entire time, Captain Nemo. Now an old man and entirely alone, he recounts to all the men all that he has done, his background which we have previously gone into, and how, after the events of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, he and the crew survived and wandered the ocean until just Nemo was left. At this, he came to dock on the mysterious island and began helping the soldiers. Now, however, he can feel his death is closing in and decides to go out with a bang. He tells the soldiers that in order to prevent the scientific marvel that is the Nautilus from being taken and be used in a way that he doesn't see fit, he will be destroying it, with himself inside. He warns them that this will activate the island's volcano, but that a ship will be nearby to save them. He then gifts the men a chest of diamonds and sends them away before saying his final words, "God and my country." And with this, Nemo dies and the Nautilus goes with him. Everything plays out as Nemo said that it would, and the men escape the island. Oh, and I neglected to mention this as it's not important to Nemo, but these soldiers had an orangutan sidekick that they had domesticated this whole time named Jupe, who fucking falls into a volcanic crag and dies at the end of the novel. I don't know why that detail is in there, but it is. This marks the end of Captain Nemo. Now, Nemo, as he appears in Fate, is a composite spirit, made up of 2 figures. The second of these, and the one in which he draws his primary appearance from, and parts of his personality, is the sea god Triton. Actually, his appearance in-game is strikingly faithful to much of the descriptions of Triton, drawing inspiration for several design decisions. For example, have you ever wondered why it is that Nemo's legs are just weirdly blue? This is because Triton himself is blue-skinned. Nemo in his 3rd ascension in particular appears with parts of his body seemingly incorporated with ship parts. While Triton himself is not part ship, he is described as having aspects of the sea attached to his body, namely barnacles and seashells. These are also commonly found on the bottoms of ships. The lack of them directly on Nemo may have more to do with the concept that he cleared them away, as this rendition of Nemo Triton is more new, and that in time they may reappear. Actually, a fun concept for a Nemo altar would lean more into that aspect of his design. Finally, the conch that Nemo wields was the preferred tool of Triton and was used to call and calm the waves, and produced a sound so loud some mistook it for a great beast. The weapon, the trident, doesn't commonly appear in Triton's design, though it is there from time to time. The one part missing is that Triton famously was a merman, which Nemo very clearly is not. Triton himself doesn't really appear often in myth, and weirdly is most commonly seen wrestling Heracles, though the story as to why is believed to be lost. Otherwise, he simply acts as the messenger for Poseidon in much the same way that Hermes does for Zeus. Fate describes Triton as a good-natured deity, which seems to have helped Nemo's more brash personality mellow out some, though I couldn't really find much indicating this. A side note, Triton is often misconstrued with the Old Man of the Sea, who in some cases is Triton, but in others is a completely separate figure. Regardless, that is Nemo in the books. I wish there was more to talk about with him, but unfortunately he is a very mysterious figure who I can't really talk very much about because there's not much information there. So, I apologize for the hyper-summarization of him, but that is how it is. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought down below. Also, consider doing all of the YouTube stuff to help me out. Otherwise, check below for my socials and the Discord. Check out our anime podcast, but for now, keep your chin up. Peace.